Hi, I'm Untitled and welcome to my follow-up review video for the VKB Gunfighter Mark.II. I've had about a month and a half to use this thing in Elite Dangerous, and I've got some things I like about it, and some things maybe not that don't like as much about it, but overall I'm very happy with it. So let's get right down to it with the things that I changed out of the box. So out of the box, this hat switch right here is included as a separate circuit board that you have to remove the analog switch that's installed there by default to install the hat switch. I didn't really have a need for an analog switch at all, and I wanted to use this for my targeting selections, and like on the MK.II, that's a hat switch in that position, so it was a good transition. And what I did was, you have to open up the stick, take out the circuit board for the analog, put in a circuit board for the hat switch, and then also I swapped the stick heads for the hat switches, because this was over here. But I like this more rounded stick head for switching pips in Elite Dangerous. It's a little easier to manipulate that way. So I just made the switch, and then I like this hat style for doing targeting. And then I use this this hat switch for doing stuff like landing gear, lights, engaging, disengaging, super cruise and hyperspace jumps, stuff like that. This button I've been using for secondary fire and trigger for primary fire, and I got some complaints about the how much noise that clicky makes. Oh, it's so clicky. Oh. So that's something that, man, I wish that was a little less noisy, but it is what it is. It's a good, trigger's got a good feel. I like the secondary two-way trigger up here as well. I use that for switching fire groups in Elite Dangerous, and also making menu selections. And for the menu selections, I have it set up so that I can push forward or back. I have it bound to the same thing, both menu selections. That way, if I'm holding down the fire button and I need to, pop over to the menu real quick to change something, I can bring my middle finger up here and make the selection that way, or I'll just usually do it this way if I'm not, by pushing my pointer finger out when it's not busy holding down the fire trigger. Something I'm not a huge fan of this stick right here. The main reason is, see, this one I can kind of roll it around a little bit. All these are able to kind of roll them around to the different positions. This one just doesn't. You can kind of hear it snapping there. It doesn't like to be rolled around, so you really just gotta go in one direction at a time. And then the push button can be kind of finicky. So I've mainly been using this for doing the head look function, since I don't really use it that much. You could change it to something else, like maybe do different ship functions with it as well. But I figured I'd just keep it simple and use it for head look only. The pinky switch, I wasn't a huge fan of it at first, but I've gotten used to the positioning. It's definitely easier to do the pinky switch on the MK.II. There's a little bit less resistance, it's more centered, it's got more meat for you to push on, more surface area to push on. I feel like it's easier to use, but at the same time, the pinky switch on this is a really solid click action. And once I took off the little pad that was here, made it a little bit easier to push as well. And the reason I took this off was because it was rubbing against this part of my hand, and it was not feeling good. So I think it's much better with it off. If you need it, if you have smaller hands, you might need the pads to raise your hand up. But for me, stick fits good without the pad for me. So that's another thing I changed. I think that's about it. I felt the resistance with the default springs was good. It's definitely helped with my railgun aim, so that's nice. And now I'll go ahead and take this thing off. That was actually, before I take it off, I was having issues with the stick disconnecting, And what it was is I just didn't have it tightened down quite enough. So if I went to push, you know, like say I was going to push forward, I would actually push the stick away from the contacts a little bit, and it would disconnect the stick momentarily, and that would screw things up with my joystick curves and all that, and I'd have to reset everything. Luckily, it didn't happen during any PvP fights, so I got lucky there. But basically, you just got to make sure the thing's seated, and then crank that fastener down to hold the stick on. It says right here, caution, tighten grip before flight. They mean that. Don't you know? Maybe don't get out your breaker bar to do it, but definitely tighten it down as good as you can get with this included Allen key. Which actually I think I'm going to use this to get it off. So now we'll go over how to adjust the dry clutch. And what the dry clutch does is, you see how if I push forward, the stick snaps back to center? Just follows the cams and snaps back to center. Well, if you adjust the dry clutch, you can make it so it doesn't snap back as easy, or it snaps back easier. And it was a little confusing at first, because I think out of the box, the dry clutch was actually set up pretty okay for me. Like, I don't think I really needed to adjust it much. But it said in the instructions, hey, do this before you go using your stick. I'm like, okay, I'll go do it. And then I was kind of confused on what exactly I was doing. But what it is you're just adjusting resistance on the stick. And there's just... Oh boy. It's on there good now, actually. I tightened it down so well, it's actually on there really good. So let me try to slide this in and push this guy out. I'm going to have to cut for a second until I get this thing off. Oh, there it goes. Never mind. Whew. Said I tightened the heck out of that thing. You can actually see where these two little pieces had dug into the splines that are on the base. I don't know if you can see those good. But those just sandwich together, like right here, and hold it in. So you want to make sure those are tight so it doesn't come out. You can see there's, I don't know if you can actually see that, but there's three little contacts inside the stick, and they correspond to the contact plates here. So you just want to make sure those are engaged good. So to get at the... And yeah, while I'm doing this, I should probably disconnect it, because my black box is now going crazy because, actually no, I'm going to leave that connected, and I'm just going to disconnect the black box real quick. Ooh. So I'm just going to take that, unplug it, I'll plug that in later, because it was blinking at me. It's like, hey, where'd the stick go, dude? So, whoops. So we just gotta undo these to get access to the dry clutch. Just going to peel off the dust cover. And now, if you look inside here, just let me take this guy off the table so you can see it a little easier. This right here, this little plastic piece, and then this little plastic piece, those are the dry clutches. And right next to them, there's these little hex key fasteners here. And they can be tightened or loosened to adjust the dry clutch. And what I suggest when you're adjusting them for the first time is to tighten them all the way, and then count how many turns you've loosened them, and then if you want them to be the same for both pitch and and roll. So I'm just going to use the included Allen key since it's pretty good for this. So I'm going to start with the part of the key facing that way, and that's where I'm going to count my turns. So I'm going to tighten it up, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's fully tight. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'll just do 9 turns because it's pretty tight now. And what that's doing is it's adjusting tension that's on a little spring that's installed in there. So now, when I go to push this forward, it doesn't, if you remember before how when I pushed it, it would really rock back to center. It's not rocking back to center quite as quickly. So that's with 9 turns. Try tightening it up a little more. That's 10. That's pretty tight now. Let's see about that. Yeah, see, it's not springing back to center as quickly, and it's a little bit harder to move, which I don't personally like. I like it to be able to spring back to center very quickly. Versus, like, you see how the other one that I didn't adjust, see how springy that is? So that's all that's involved in adjusting the tri-clutch. So I'm going to turn that back to where it was. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That should be back to where it was. Let's see, oh, that springs back a lot easier now. I did kind of want to maybe change the cams to the, there's 2 different types of cams that are included in it. There's one that's more just rounded, and there's one that's got more of a divot, or maybe more of a more positive centering action. But I think I'm just going to leave the springs and stuff as they are for now, because I'm happy with them right now. I'm used to them. I don't want to go changing it up now that I've already gotten used to it. So that's the basics of a dry clutch adjustment. And then to put everything back together, you just reverse the steps. So go line that up. So you're just lining up with the screw holes. Take that extension off. So I think I can keep my arm out of the way of the camera. Get that off. That's a little easier. And I suggest, you know, as you do with anything like this, do it in a star pattern, and then, you know, snug them up in a star pattern, and then tighten it down in a star pattern, just like if you were doing the lug nuts on a car or something. And then I'll get this down nice and even. They don't have to be super tight, just snug, and that's good. Now it has to be super tight is the parts that hold the stick right here with all the splines and stuff. So what you do for this is you got to put these in. One of them, the one like that doesn't have the, see how one of them's got a well for the bolt to go into? Or the screw, I should say, screw bolt. I'm not sure. Oop. It's kind of tricky. So put your screw in like that, your bolt. I think it's a bolt. And slide that guy in there. And then slide this guy in the other way. It's kind of tricky to do. It might be easier even if I just put this on here. I was going to try to show it so the camera could see it easier, but let's go in like that. The other one goes in like that. Like so. Get them lined up. And then you gotta hold on to the opposite side while you tighten down the bolt. Just get it to slot in there. And actually got this thing on here crooked, so that's not right. Alright, so now I got these things together at least. So they're in there, they're connected. I can just kind of get this thing lined up, because you want to line up this little hole with this pin here, otherwise it won't be correct. There you go, make sure it's all the way down. Seated, which it is now, and then you can tighten it up the rest of the way. And I usually just like to push down on the stick as I'm tightening it up to make sure it stays seated. So I'm pushing down while I'm tightening it. That's about as tight as I can get it with the Allen key that way. So I'll switch it to this way to get a little bit more torque. And I'm dead serious. I'm tightening the bejesus out of it, so that way it doesn't come off. And so if you're having any issues where if you're moving the stick and it temporarily disconnects, reseat it, tighten the heck out of it, and then it should be good. So that's about it. And I believe if you want to lock your twist, you can insert a little bolt here, and that will prevent your twist from moving, but I use the twist for rudder, so I'm not going to do that. Okay, so that's my follow-up review for the VKB Gunfighter Mark II. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment or DM me on Twitter. Until next time, I've been Untitled Chapter. Keep the dirty side down, and don't do anything I wouldn't do.